Hey, this is Claude again, back at it with the Python Chronicles. So, last video I made, I was actually going over what functions were and defining functions and playing with that command, the DEF command, the define function command. So, today I'm going to actually expand a little bit more on functions as well as add another piece into it where I'm talking about classes. So, a class which just isn't unique to Python. And I want to give a shout out to the wonderful folks over at Black Codes. Uh, when you talk about classes, you you can think of, let's say, a category of something, and that something are normally objects. Okay, these classes have these objects that are in common with one another that will be able to execute given functions within that class. So, with that being said, uh, let me bring up this here quick diagram, try to illustrate this concept. So, here we got cups, we got a lavender cup, and we got a purple cup. I want to consider those as classes. Okay, these classes, there are individual instructions inside of these classes that can be applied to what I'll call the lavender cup. Those functions, those instructions can be applied to the marbles. And in the purple cup, its functions and its instructions can be applied to the stars. Okay. So now at the same time, you can have parent classes and child classes. Like for example, you can have the lavender cup as a class, the purple cup as a class, and they can be child classes. They can also aggregate into, let's say, a parent class of cups. Okay, the cups could be the parent class, and like I said, the lavender cup, the purple cup could be child classes. And within these classes, we got objects. In this lavender example, you have marbles of various colors. Okay, and these various color marbles could be doing any of the functions within the lavender cup that the lavender cup defines as its functions. They could be doing anything independently of themselves. The same with the stars over in the purple cup. They can be executing independently the functions of the purple cup. Now let me go ahead and bring over my text editor. And what I'm actually going to also introduce is the notion of using classes from a different file. So there was a couple videos ago where I talked about, I was joking almost, where I said there's an app for anything. It was an old phrase that, there's an app for that, there's an app for that. And if you didn't have that app, you can create one. So what I'm doing in this here demonstration is I'm actually going to call on a module that I created, which contained nothing more than classes. And I kept it simple. I used the example in the diagram where I talked about a lavender class and a purple class when I, in relation to those cups. Okay. So what I've come to do here is what I'm going to do is I'm going to import this here particular module called my class module. Okay. And what that's going to do, that's going to alert this here. It's going to alert Python that, okay, there's certain information in this here file, my class module, that I need to import into this current program that I'm executing. Okay. And this is pretty much going to import the entire module. Now, if you want to get real, real surgical with it, there's individual things that you want to import from a given module. You can do that with no problem. But for my purposes, I'm just going to try to keep it simple here so I don't confuse myself too much. So here, what we have the lavender module, okay, that contain marbles in it. If you remember the diagram, the lavender module, the lavender cup, contained marbles in it. So therefore, the functions that's defined in that class will pertain to the various colored marbles within that class. So here what we'll do is I'll create an object, and just for simplistic sake, let's say we got a green marble in there, we got a blue marble in there, we got a red marble in there. Clearly see that on the picture. So let's define a couple things. Let's create. We're going to create an object, and when we do that, we're going to define it like this. We're going to go green marble equals. Now here, what we're going to do is we're going to call on the module itself, and then we're going to use the dot operator, and we're going to define that class that has that function in it. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll go green marble is equal to my class module dot lavender, close parentheses. Okay. So we define that object for this given program that we're creating right now. And what we'll do is we can also create a module for the purple cup. And if you remember the diagram, the purple cup had the various colored stars in there. So we got a brown star, we got a orange star, we got blue stars. So let's do this. We'll define another object, and we'll call this red star equal to, again, calling on the module, okay? And the actual class, this will not be lavender, but this will be purple, pertaining to the purple cup. So all the characteristics of the purple class is going to be attached to this object known as red star. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll save that. And what we have here is basically, when it comes to the marbles class, there's a couple different instructions that we can carry out. Instructions slash functions, let me put it that way. So we have a function known as bounce, a function known as roll, and a function known as bump. Those are the characteristics of the lavender class, or I should say the lavender cup that the marbles sit inside of. So if we were to do something like this, we were to say green marble, okay, That's our object, and we give it a function. We want it to do something, and we want it to roll. Plain and simple, we just want it to roll. Okay, so we define the object, and now what we're going to do is we're going to give that object a function, and this function will be to roll. So what we'll do is we'll save this here, and then we'll execute it, and that roll function will carry out a subset of code, and that subset of code can be anything. Okay, anything that you decide to put in there. But these simple functions that I have in here, bounce, roll, and bump, they're just going to print out certain text. So here, what you see is down at the bottom, the roll function gives us a return of it's on the run away from us. So it's literally rolling away from us. Okay. Now we can try and we can change this function to bump. So let's go bump. Okay. And what we'll get here is we'll get a different we got a different function for the green marble object. Okay. And this is going to give us a different output. Okay. It's going to execute a different subset of instructions and functions. So here, the function bump gives us the return of looks like the game of marbles has begun. So that's just a reference to the old school ground game we used to play as children, where we would shoot the marbles at one another and bump our buddies' marbles out of the circle, and try our best to take those marbles away from them. Okay, and I'll go ahead and I'll put one more function that's actually defined in this here class, and that is bounce. Okay, so when we execute this given function for this green marble object, we get a return of smack the ground with a good bounce. So those are examples of three separate functions that's defined in this here, what I call the lavender cup, aka the lavender class. Okay, so let me define another another object. So like I said, we have another class in here which we call purple, and this has stars in it. So let's do this. We will define the red star. Okay, and that's going to be our object, right? And what we're going to do is we got to give that a function. So the purple class, which I defined up here, the purple class has its own set of functions pertaining to stars, and its instructions, okay, its functions would be shoot, burn, or twinkle. Okay, and just like we saw with the lavender in the lavender class, there's going to be a set of output with those given instructions or those given functions as well. So let's do this. Let's go red star, put the dot operator in there, and we'll go burn. Okay, and that function will return to us with a set of output. Okay, that's in that class, that's defined in that class for those objects, and what we will get is the burn function returns brighter than 10 suns all together. Okay, that's the instructions there. Now we can change that function to twinkle. Okay, and that function will give us another output of flickering up there in the northern horizon. Okay, that's what the twinkle function does within that class. Okay, and we can do the last one, shoot. So the function shoot gives us an output of watch it race across the sky. So what this does, going through this here little process, I was actually able to get an understanding of how the classes can define given instructions, given functions to be executed for a group of common objects. And each one of those objects can be doing something totally different from one another. On top of that, what I also did here was, and let me actually bring up the file that it was actually pulling from, the actual. So you see here, this is the file, the Python file that it was actually pulling from to give me those returns. So, like I said, the lavender class, and then there's the purple class. But like I said, one of the things that, that I wanted to take away from this here was importing Python programs that you create to execute within your current Python program. And what this does, this actually gave me the notion of, because I was thinking about this with my network gear when I was messing with NetMiko, and basically creating files of all my hardware devices that will be stored somewhere where I can create uh, a running program that will pull that file in to look for a given device that it needs to actually access. Now, don't get me wrong, all that stuff can actually be imported. Well, let me take that back. All that stuff can actually be compiled in the actual program itself. But what happens is now you got a long file on your hand. You got a long program on your hand. And as we know, to be efficient, we want to make the program as short as possible. So as you see here, this is simply 4 lines in this here current program that I'm doing here. But a lot of the work that's being done is coming from other files. So that was the other caveat that I wanted to, reiterate, that I had to grill and get the grasp of, is calling other Python files where the work has already been done. And in this case, I created that file where the classes were defined for what those objects were capable of doing as far as their functions. So, like I said, hope you get something from this quick demonstration of classes and even defining those functions within classes. But like I said, it's still on this here journey, and like I said, until the next time, happy coding, and talk to you later.